Hey agents, it's Dispatch. Let's continue our discussion of repairs, this time with some added input from some other content creators. A couple of things have come to light recently, so let's put it all together.
Hey, thanks a lot.
First up, in our last video, we discussed the raw repair values of different types of repairs. Let me say, before we go any further, that I only really discussed PvE. PvP is an entirely different part of the game that I do not play and I have huge issues with. Let me know if you want to hear my spicy takes on that in a future video, and or if you want me to apply these numbers to PvP. Some things that I didn't know that were recently brought to light. Preservation repairs 12% of your armor for a body shot kill, not 10%. Fog of War discovered this, so props to him and his eagle eyes for catching this oddity. Also, Dodd recently brought to light that Memento seems to be repairing at a rate of 6% at full stacks instead of 3%. I actually couldn't replicate this, so I don't know what the deal is. We'll have to do some more investigating. At this point, unless you're in a group, Memento still seems to be pretty firmly in the lead as best in slot for any kind of hybrid build because you get bonus armor, regen, 3 weapon damage cores, skill efficiency, and an extra skill tier, so sign me up. Dodd also brought up that clutch gives you maximum benefit when you have a high amount of armor missing, and this diminishes rapidly as you repair your armor. I don't know how I missed this, but there we go, another reason why it hasn't really worked for me. Alright, now let's put our previous repair numbers into context. We're all familiar with the term BTK or bullets to kill, but have you ever heard of RTD? Probably not because I just made it up. RTD means rounds till death, as in how many rounds you can take before dying. I've also coined another term, rounds per second, meaning how many incoming rounds you can take per second and maintain your armor. At this point, I can only assume that my Nobel Prize is in the mail. Thanks to YouTuber Fog of War again, we've got rough enemy damage numbers per bullet. Here they are, sorted by type of enemy. Not every enemy type is here, but this gives us a good baseline. We notice that the higher the veterancy of the enemy, the more damage they do per bullet for the same type. I can also say with high confidence that the higher the enemy veterancy, the more they shoot and the more accurate they seem to be. Enemies with automatic weapons have very similar damage numbers, and they usually shoot in 4 to 5 round bursts at a time. The exception to this is heavies and gunners. Though each enemy does slightly more or less damage per bullet, I've divided the damage values into 5 rough tiers. Tier 1 is basic assault and automatic weapon enemies of red and purple variety that do roughly 50,000 damage conservatively. The next tier does roughly 75,000 damage per bullet. Tier 3 consists of usually pistol wielding enemies that fire slower and do roughly 125,000 damage per bullet. Tier 4 are shotgunners who do roughly 350,000 damage when accounting for all pellets. The final tier is snipers and sniper dogs, who can do extremely hefty damage but fire very rarely or in a telegraphed move. You should treat these as high threat but shouldn't really account for them in these calculations due to the fact that you should be avoiding their attacks or killing them. So let's take these numbers and combine them with repair to see how many rounds we can really take. As you can see here, we have our armor regen analogy on the top from last video, and then down here we got the rounds to death over here, showing if you add number of armor cores, if you add forge, if you add skill health, this is how many rounds that you can take until you die. And that's based off of our enemy damage over here. And then all of these cells over here are rounds per second that you can take to maintain your current armor level. First, things are looking pretty good for our armor. 43 extra bullets before going down sounds pretty good, right? Well, until you realize that a standard wave of enemies is 8. Each one can do a burst of 5 rounds in about a second, so that puts us at about 40 incoming rounds right off the bat. So we can see our armor regen miner is, dumpster tier. I'll now cycle through the enemy damage tiers. You can pause it at any time if you want to check out where you're sitting on each of these numbers right here. Remember that the artificer values are based on 22% shield repair, and you can make this much higher by increasing your skill tiers and your repair skills attributes. Also see that the amount of foundry repair coming from our armor value is very small compared to the amount coming from our shield. Therefore, we should favor skill tiers over armor cores again, because the armor cores aren't actually giving us that much repair as opposed to the repair that is coming from your shield taking damage. As we can see, Foundry, Liberty, and the Artificer maintain their leads, obviously, for highest repairs in the game. And we can also see that armor regen minor attributes are again absolutely terrible. Unless you're running a hazard build, leave all those blue miners in the trash. We're getting almost 8 rounds per second from a tier 1 enemy. That is really, really good, meaning you should be able to basically be stable in a 1v1 against one of these enemies. Combining all three of these will make you essentially invincible unless you start taking grenades. Keep in mind, too, that you need a tier 3 shield to have the active regen be able to compensate for an average of even 1 bullet per second. This is what is commonly referred to as a breakpoint. Usually this term is used for one-shot builds relating to how much damage you need to do to one-shot an enemy. Here we're taking it back the other direction in regards to how much damage you can take. Each armor core essentially gives you another 3 to 4 enemy bullets. This might allow you to take one more burst from this type of enemy, but when you've got 8 enemies in a wave, it seems pretty dubious without any repair to back it up. Having even a skill tier 0 mender and fixer will repair the armor advantage in 5 seconds. There's another wrinkle to this. Standing still means you take more damage, and getting closer can mean you take less damage. Let's watch a video to see why. As you can see, we can trigger a melee animation from some enemies that stops their firing. However, if you get caught by this, you are in an almost irrecoverable position. It also seems that the enemy has a relatively fixed max tracking speed. If you get close enough with enemies of a lower veterancy, they just can't seem to track you nearly as effectively. If you move perpendicular to the enemy at range though, they seem to be able to track you. They're less accurate range, but that seems to surprisingly even out due to the fact that they can still track you. They can only turn at a max angular velocity, so as you get closer, your angular velocity to them changes more than if you're further away. However, if you move directly at them, or shoot, or pull out a shield, or stand still, they will absolutely hit a very high percentage of shots. Therefore, if there are more than 3 enemies alive, you're likely going to be unable to avoid moving directly in line with one of them, and your survivability will be drastically reduced. Put your shield away and move when reloading or repositioning. Get on the move to reduce incoming damage. This fact also reinforces the dominance of shields. You can put them away and pull them out exactly when you need to. Something like the Hive you have to pick up, a Chem you have to stay in the cloud. The Deflector drone won't keep up with you, and neither will the Fixer or the Mender Seeker. This is why people tend to prefer run and gun builds. There's a certain logic to it. Moving reduces incoming damage, and while you are ready to start shooting again, you've got your shield to protect you while you're less mobile and take more damage. It's also fun. It makes you feel powerful, not having to be stock still, glued to cover at a distance. So it seems counterintuitive, but sometimes getting closer with a run and gun build actually increases your survivability as opposed to staying at a distance in cover. Alright agents, that's all for today. Hope you learned just a little bit more about how to increase your survivability in the Division 2. Hit that like button if you liked it, dislike button if you disliked it, and let me know in the comments what you thought. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hopefully I can have a build efficiency translation of this data in the coming weeks. So let me know if you want to see that. Once again, agents, this has been Dispatch. Take care out there.